For 8 centuries, the largest statue in the ancient world lay in pieces on the ground, and people traveled across the sea just to look at the wreck. Its bronze fingers were thicker than most whole statues stood tall. Sailors coming into the harbor could see the broken giant from miles out. A fallen sun god sprawled across the earth where an earthquake had thrown him. Kings offered fortunes to raise him back onto his feet, and the people who had built him said no. They believed the god himself had chosen to stay down. This is the story of the Colossus of Rhodes, a bronze giant that stood for barely 54 years and then spent the next 800 as the most famous ruin on Earth. To understand why the Rhodians ever built something so enormous, you have to start not with the statue, but with a war, because the Colossus was never meant to be a decoration. It was a victory monument, cast from the melted weapons of an enemy who thought he could not lose. If you enjoy this kind of history, the deep story behind a name everyone half remembers, do me a quick favor and hit that like button, drop a comment with what ancient wonder you want next, and subscribe so you do not miss what we dig into after this. It genuinely helps the channel grow. Now back to the siege. In the year 305 before the Common Era, the Greek world was a snake pit. Alexander the Great had died young and left no clear heir, and his generals had spent the next 2 decades tearing his empire apart and crowning themselves kings over the pieces. One of the most ambitious was a man named Demetrius, son of Antigonus, and Demetrius had earned a nickname that told you everything about him. They called him Poliorcetes, the besieger, the taker of cities. He built war machines the way other men built reputations, and in that year he turned all of that ambition toward the island of Rhodes. Rhodes sat in the eastern Mediterranean, a wealthy trading island near the coast of what is now Turkey, and it had made the mistake of staying friendly with Demetrius's rival, Ptolemy of Egypt. So Demetrius came for it with everything he had. He arrived with a fleet of some 200 warships and hundreds more supply vessels, and an army of 40,000 men, more people than lived in the city itself. This was not a raid. This was a machine built to erase a place from the map. The siege that followed lasted about a year, and it produced one of the strangest weapons of the ancient world. Demetrius ordered the construction of a rolling siege tower unlike anything seen before, a monster his engineers called the Helios, which means the taker of cities. It stood over 100 feet tall, built in 9 tapering stories, plated in iron to shrug off fire, and mounted on 8 massive wheels. It took thousands of men to push it forward. Inside were catapults and stone throwers on every level, and it crept toward the walls of Rhodes like a slow-moving fortress, raining iron and stone down onto the defenders. And the Rhodians held. That is the part that matters. They dug ditches to trap the great tower, they flooded the ground before it so its wheels sank into mud, and they concentrated their own catapults on it until they had battered its iron plating loose. Demetrius, for all his engines and all his men, could not break them. When his own allies started pressuring him to make peace and word came that he was needed elsewhere, the besieger did something he was not used to doing. He gave up. In 304, before the Common Era, he negotiated a truce, packed up and sailed away. But he left something behind. In his hurry to leave, Demetrius abandoned most of his siege equipment on the shore, including the great Helios itself, tons upon tons of iron, timber, and bronze fittings. To the Rhodians, this abandoned war machinery was not junk. It was treasure, and it was proof. They sold it off, and the sale raised an enormous sum, some 300 talents of bronze and iron, a fortune in the ancient world. And they decided what to do with it. They would build a statue to thank the god they believed had saved them, the sun god Helios, the patron and protector of their island. They would build him taller than any statue had ever been built, and they would build him out of the enemy's own weapons. The man they hired for the job was a sculptor named Charis of Lindos, a Rhodian from a town on the island, and by tradition a student of Lysippos, one of the greatest sculptors of the age and a favorite of Alexander himself. Charis took on a challenge that had no precedent. Bronze statues were cast in pieces and assembled, but nobody had ever tried to cast one this big, and the engineering problem was brutal. A hollow bronze figure over 100 feet tall would be top-heavy, thin-walled, and terribly vulnerable to wind and its own weight. His solution was slow and ingenious. The Colossus was built from the feet up over roughly 12 years, from about 292 to 280 before the Common Era. Chares raised it on a base of white marble. Inside, he set up a skeleton of iron bars and a framework of square stone blocks to carry the weight and hold everything rigid. Over that internal structure, his workers fixed hundreds of individually cast bronze plates, hammered and fitted section by section. As the figure rose, they are thought to have banked earth up around it in a great ramp. Building the next level of bronze while standing on the packed dirt of the last, then digging it all away at the end to reveal the finished god. When the earth was cleared, Rhodes had something no city on earth could match. The finished statue stood about 70 cubits tall, which works out to roughly 108 feet, or 33 meters. For scale, that is close to the height of the Statue of Liberty from her heel to the top of her head, without the pedestal. It was the tallest statue in the known world, and it depicted Helios as a powerful young man, almost certainly nude in the Greek style, likely with a crown of sun rays around his head and one hand possibly raised to shade his eyes as he looked out to sea. It gleamed. Fresh bronze is not the green we imagine, it is a warm reddish gold, and when the sun hit it, the god of the sun would have blazed above the harbour like a second sunrise. Now here is where we have to kill one of history's most beloved myths. You have probably seen the image, the Colossus standing with a leg planted on each side of the harbour mouth, ships sailing full-masted between its ankles. It is a stunning picture, and it is completely false. That version comes from medieval and Renaissance imaginations, not from anyone who ever saw the statue. The engineering alone makes it impossible. A bronze figure straddling a harbour that wide would have snapped under its own weight instantly, and the harbour would have had to close for over a decade of construction. The ancient sources never describe it that way. The Colossus almost certainly stood with its feet together, or nearly so, upright and self-contained. Most likely on a promontory or breakwater near the entrance to the harbour at Mandrake, watching over the ships, rather than framing them. It stood there, gleaming over Rhodes, for about 54 years. And then the ground moved. Around the year 226 before the Common Era, a powerful earthquake struck Rhodes. It damaged much of the city, cracked its famous shipyards, and it found the weakest point in Chares's giant. The Colossus snapped at the knees and came crashing down, an enormous mass of bronze and iron collapsing onto the land at the harbour's edge. 54 years of standing, and it fell in seconds. What happened next is, in some ways, the most remarkable part of the whole story. The Rhodians did not clear it away. Ptolemy III of Egypt, one of the richest men alive, offered to pay the entire cost of rebuilding the Colossus, a staggering act of generosity, and the Rhodians turned him down. According to the historian Strabo, an oracle had warned them not to raise it again, and the people came to believe that Helios himself had thrown down his own statue, that the god was displeased and wanted it left where it lay. So they left it. A 100-foot god, broken across the ground, untouched out of religious dread. And that is how it became something arguably stranger than a standing wonder. It became a fallen one, and people came from all over the ancient world to see it. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder saw the ruins with his own eyes and left us one of the best descriptions we have. He marveled that even lying in pieces the thing was astonishing, that few people could wrap their arms all the way around its thumb, and that its fingers were larger than most complete statues. You could stand inside the broken limbs and stare up into the hollow bronze cavern of a god's leg. The great gaping openings in the shattered pieces revealed the rocks and stone blocks Chares had used to weight and steady his creation. For a traveller in the ancient Mediterranean, this was a bucket list stop, a wonder you could walk up to and touch. The broken Colossus lay there for around 800 years. Empires rose and fell around it. Rome conquered the Greek world, and Rome itself split and faded in the west, while the Greek-speaking East carried on as the Byzantine Empire. And still the bronze giant lay by the harbour, a ruin so old that by the end even the people looking at it were separated from its builders by more time than separates us from the Middle Ages. Its final chapter came in the year 653 of the Common Era. An Arab force under the Umayyad commander Muawiyah captured Rhodes, and according to the chroniclers, the remaining bronze of the Colossus was sold off as scrap metal to a merchant. The tradition says it took 900 camels to haul away all the pieces. Historians treat that number with caution, and the details are hazy, but the essence is almost certainly true. After nearly 1,000 years, standing and fallen combined, the metal of the sun god was melted down, carried off, and scattered into the ordinary objects of a new age. Not one fragment of the Colossus of Rhodes survives today. We do not even know for certain exactly where it stood. But the idea of it never died. The Colossus was counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the classical bucket list of monuments so grand they defined human achievement. And unlike most of that list, it had the shortest life of all. It stood for barely 2 generations, yet it outlived its own bronze in fame by thousands of years. And it left one very long shadow. When the sculptor Frederick Auguste Bartholdi designed the Statue of Liberty in the 19th century, he had the Colossus in mind, another towering figure at a harbor mouth, welcoming rather than warning. And when the poet Emma Lazarus wrote the words now fixed to liberty's base, she named the connection directly. Her poem is called The New Colossus, and it opens by contrasting liberty with the old bronze giant of Greek fame. So the giant that stood for 54 years never really fell. Chares of Lindos built a god out of an enemy's abandoned weapons. An earthquake threw it down, faith kept it lying where it landed, and time eventually carried the metal away on the backs of camels. But the picture of a colossus at the edge of the water, watching the ships come in, was too powerful to die. It just moved to a new harbor, and it is still standing there today. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, subscribe for more stories like this one, and I will see you in the next one.